Hi, now we will look into how to do an audio configuration for different digital audio workstations. Let's start with reviewing the configuration that I had. So for the simple case, I will use Digitakt as it has 12 channels in and 2 channels out. And this will be simulating the kind of a basic sound card in general, where you have like 2 channels or two channels in and 2 channels out. To show how to configure a complex audio setup, I will use the aggregate device that I have created named PR Audio. This device has pretty much 58 channels in and 48 channels out, and it is aggregating Universal Audio Thunderbolt devices, a drum machine, and the drums. So this is a good one to use for a complex audio configuration in digital audio workstations. As we now have our background covered, let's jump into Pro Tools to see how it is configured for the audio. Let's start Pro Tools and see how the audio configuration is done in Pro Tools. Let's just create an empty project for us to play around. So when it comes to configuring audio in Pro Tools, things will take place underneath the setup menu. Firstly, you will start from the playback engine. By default, when you install Pro Tools, it will create an aggregate device called Pro Tools Aggregate I/O. However, we will dive in with the simple configuration first, and we will change this playback engine to Digitakt. And now I get all these notifications and things that I need to click through and most likely restart the Pro Tools as well. Alrighty, so let's verify that the playback engine has changed to Digitakt. Yes, it is. Here I have a buffer size 512. I could lower it, but it's okay in this case to have it 512. Let's say OK over here. So to go into audio configuration, you need to go underneath setup menu, the I/O part. And here, as we have a very simple device and sound card in this case, there is only one output, and that's the main left and right channels that go out to the channels 1 and 2 in Digitakt. But then when we go to input, we'll see that Pro Tools has automatically already mapped this as well. So you have the main stereo coming in, and then you have the input channels at the bottom, and the individual channels are here. Pro Tools also creates a kind of sub path for mono channels underneath the stereo channel. So you could use these also when doing an audio routing in Pro Tools. However, if you would like to kind of do this differently, you can of course go here and then basically delete the path. And then if you just want to create mono, you can go here and say that, yeah, please add a new path, mono. And then, like in our case, we used kick. You can create that one. And now you have a kick path for the third channel coming in, which is correct. Then we also had monos for left and right input in Digitakt. So I could just do the same here, so that I just kind of delete this path and create a new one, a mono, which is saying in left, and then now we didn't place it correctly because it's not on the 4th channel, but it's actually in 11th. So you can just drag and move them to get the right one. And then of course let's create another one for the right one. And the same thing, so it actually takes the first available one that is not mapped, but in this case it's not right, we need to go into the 12. So now I have changed the basic configuration over here and show how to create these paths for your sound card, and specifically the channels that are coming in this case. You can also export settings, meaning you can save these and then you can import them later on. So if you have different type of audio configurations, like one in your home studio, another one in your studio that you frequently go, you could create one setting for your home and another setting for your studio that you go into. But I'm happy with these configurations, and you know, in output channel there is not much to be done. So I'm happy with that as well, and then I just say okay. Let's create a couple of tracks in order to kind of see how the routing for the tracks takes place when kind of getting the audio routed from the external channels. Let's do two tracks, one in a mono. And then let's add another one in a in stereo. And let's create these. So now I have a mono track and then I have a stereo track. Here also I need to see that the output is going correctly over here, and then here this is actually goes to output directly. I could also route it into my mix bus so that it kind of it goes to the mix bus instead, and through mix bus it goes out. Anyway, this has now already mapped the mono from kick. So basically, if I now play the Digitakt, it will start playing the kick in this mono channel. And then of course I need to arm it. And now we can basically see that, you know, the kick is pumping over there. Similarly, if I will change this channel from kick to the in left, which is the Moog, now you can see the audio signal coming from Moog. And then again, if I just disable this monitoring and I'll actually use the main stereo that is already mapped here as well as in, I hear everything. So this is basically quite trivial in a sense how to route audio from the external input channels that you have configured and defined here in the setup and I/O section. Next we will then dive into more complex audio configuration, and let's recall that setup. So I just delete these tracks because I can recreate them easily and then map them correctly to the new audio device that we will use. So I will go to setup and I will go to playback engine. And then from here, I don't gonna use Digitakt, but instead I'm gonna actually use the aggregate device that I have configured for all my digital audio workstations, which is this PR audio. And let's say yes, and let's say okay. And now basically it gives me the same thing, that things are not mapped and so on and so forth, and auto mapping and whatever. So this one is now the mix bus that I had, and this goes to the main out now. So let's go and review the IO. So in this case now it has basically recalled as well as the Ableton Live did. So it can recall the device related configuration. So I have here my out monitor going out, and then I have my outgoing lines. Here I actually have also a sub line which is a mono. So you can create these sublines in a way that you select this one and you say that a new sub path. Then that is an output in that sense, and I could rename it like B line 1, 2, as this is the second line of that one pair, and then of course move it correctly into underneath 14th. So now I have a primary stereo channel and then the mono channels underneath it. Then if I go to input section, I see all the, the already mapped channels. I have several channels that I don't use. And as I don't have any SPDIF devices, and these are all kind of virtual channels, so they are not really real channels per se. So I'm more interested on the analog channels that are coming into the system and using those. So that's pretty much the case with this configuration. If I would like to recall the configuration, I could basically go and say that import settings. Then I'll select my configuration and I say open. And then it says, okay, delete unused buses. Yes, I say yes. And now basically I'm back in with the imported settings. Anyway, this kind of is what I want it to be. So I'll just say okay over here. Let's again go and create a couple of tracks. Sorry, one mono and another stereo. And of course I could have created two tracks at the same time, but I didn't, so I'll create another one saying as a stereo. And there again I have now two tracks, and then they both actually are now going into my my bus. Actually I wanna route these not directly into the output, but for the bus and go through bus and then out. This mono actually already mapped it into Minimux, so the first mono channel as a standalone one. But instead of like using that, I could take the drum synthesizer TR8S, and from there take, for example, the bass drum, as we did in a previous session as well with Ableton Live. And then this I could actually bring in, not output, sorry. I could bring in from TR8S as well. Then now if I arm it and I start TR8S, I should hear some sounds. And again, if now I can hear the bass drum or the kick drum or then a snare. Anyway, all these lines coming in are now in my use, so I can, you know, use any of them as, and I have also correctly named them. I know what I'm getting, so I don't need to guess from a number that what this channel is and where it is coming from. So as said with Ableton Live session as well, it's a good practice to name those, so you don't need to guess what's going on. There's actually one additional thing that I mentioned, that some digital audio workstations actually support generating kind of aggregate devices. So if we go back to the I/O, I could actually have so that I only have as my main device, I have the universal audio Thunderbolt devices, and then I could bring other devices into as aux I/O. So of course you will get all warnings, but then you can say okay. But there is actually one thing, and sorry, I was maybe too quick. But it says that these ones that are brought in here, input and output latency may not be consistent and cannot be delay compensated. So in that sense, it's a good thing to have an aggregate device as your main thingy, as these might go out of sync when you bring them as aux I/O. But you could do that, like I could bring in the Digitakt so that I get all the inputs from the Digitakt into this configuration, and now I see them here. So I have here now the stereo channel for the Digitakt as well, and I could then utilize them in my project. So let's go over here, and instead of saying this one, I actually go to the first channel, which is a stereo channel for Digitakt, and I'll arm it, and then if I play something from Digitakt, you can actually hear it. So this was the part that, you know, differs a bit from Ableton Live. So you can actually create this type of aggregate devices within Pro Tools. However, word of caution, you can't really kind of, or as it said, it is not delay compensated, so it might get out of sync. Of course, if you are recording some things, you can always correct that then with the audio files. Anyway, I think this concludes the audio configuration part at this time with Pro Tools. Later on, we will discuss about how to use effects and how to bring them in, and how to configure how really configure the external synthesizers into Pro Tools or any other DAWs that we will look into. As there is this kind of an interesting thing regarding inserts, but we'll dive into that later. And that's a new thing for me as well, so I need to check it out, that how to correctly configure it. But I know that this is the place where I can use that, and also external effects are defined as inserts. Anyway, I think we are done now with the first primary audio configuration in Pro Tools, and we are good to go. This concludes the configuring audio settings in Pro Tools. Next we will do it in Logic Pro X. Remember to subscribe for the channel. See you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye now.